Computational environments. Our initial idea was to have an organism-computer hybrid sculpture for the audience to interact with. We were thinking about using a slimy material you could touch that acted as an interface for a computer. At the beginning, we just knew we wanted an interactive sculpture that seemed alive, that you could touch, inspired by the concept of the cyborg. I was inspired by these AI-generated images by Uma Burgess, thinking about the naturalization of the design of computers as sleek and perfect, as well as alternative uses for these machines. Here, Dr. Grebenikov constructs machines to perform entomancy, the alchemy of insect divination. Another inspiration was this book, All Tomorrows, by C.M. Kozman. It follows unique evolutions of humanity after they are scattered across the galaxy to different worlds. It uses abject/body horror to impact the reader. I was interested in the idea that evolution hasn't finished. This kind of story helps disrupt the idea of humans as unchangeable, top of the food chain, and inevitability. We thought the piece could be a creature designed / a human edited to be used as a computer. These are some initial plans for an idea of having a moulded shape where you could place your hands, which would receive a usable input when people touch it from flex sensors or capacitors, inspired by the film Johnny Mnemonic. Developing our ideas of this kind of unit shape with the input in front, kind of like a standard computer, we hit on an idea of the organism being a decentralized network. Once we got into this point, I was looking into potential organisms with relations to computing we could use. We quickly looked onto slime mold and more generally fungus as our visual inspiration. This is a paper I came across by Professor Andrew Adamatsky, which explores using slime mold for computing. He argues its growth is analogous to computation, with the ability to distributively sense its environment, transfer information across itself, and decide where to forage or migrate further. I think it's interesting the superiority assumed to be held by animals with brains as well as traditional computers is undermined in the way slime mold can display a form of intelligence without having a brain itself. When looking into slime mold, this article referenced Adamatsky's paper 5 years later, after the popularity of the Last of Us show recently, which includes the cordyceps, a fungus that infects humans. The other image came up in our preliminary research into cyborgs and the relationship between science and science fiction. It's interesting to think about the possibility of the looping relationship between the two things, how both can inspire the other. This interaction may become turbocharged by the internet and zeitgeist content creation, pushing these posts onto everyone's feeds. Maybe we could see a spike in interest in fungal computing again in the near future. Connected to Adamatsky's paper, this is a demonstration of slime mold, recreating the Tokyo railway system in a model. This shows the efficiency of its growth, the main aspect I want to try to visually represent. We ran with the direction that the slime mold had reached out and grown over an office setting with a desktop computer. We also decided the movement we wanted was a shaking breathing effect through servos, pushing, or inflatables. Mishma got a test set up of a pressure sensor affecting how a servo moved, the plan being to have a pressure sensor placed underneath a layer of latex material amongst the central growth to act as our input. Looking to connect, how does the organism grow? I like the idea that this thing is learning, replicating, creating, extending, and connecting, evolving like the humans in All Tomorrows. It could replicate forms in its surface that it's come across, e.g. since it's connected with a computer, it begins to grow forms based on circuitry and wiring. I made this little test trying out pushing a piece of cardboard using 2 servo motors against a latex sheet to mimic breathing. The effect was kind of underwhelming, and if we wanted that kind of movement underneath the skin, I think we could have made it work. However, for our project we wanted a breathing, shuddering effect, so we decided to use inflatables. We had a tutorial with Jen and Pauline, where we presented our ideas framed around this plan of having the slime mold growing over an office desk and having a narrative of a scientist discovering and researching it. We were told to make it a bit more ambiguous / drop the narrative and have some more faith in the viewers to fill in the gaps around the ideas. These are some material tests with the latex. I did some casting of electronic parts in latex, the plan being to have these grown in the surface of the organism. Trying to make it a little more ambiguous, these could act as memories in the surface from the organism encountering our technology. I came across this work by Jan Schimmel, which really worked for me and Mishma in demonstrating the look for how our project was developing, as well as having connected ideas. Schimmel proposes new designs for computers inspired by the magical, crystalline, esoteric designs in popular video games, rejecting their current sleek, minimalistic look, choosing instead to reflect their ability to interface with alternate realities. The sculpture is a functioning computer which the viewer can play a video game with. This is a proposed final plan, displaying it on a wire mesh surface with 3 to 4 moving, breathing parts using inflatables, with a central growth that has a pressure sensor which people can touch, changing their behaviour. I think it's also important to have small examples of growth off of the frame as well, to further the effect that the organism is still growing outwards. This is the working title coming into being and description of the work, focusing on the idea of a non-human cyborg, an organism that is growing outwards and looking to connect. Testing out the latex on a wire mesh. I started 3D modelling casts that we could then use in latex for the air pockets, which worked very well, making it airtight, but I wasn't so happy with the look, so I wanted to go ahead and design some more kind of organic shapes inspired by the slime mold. These are breathing tests, checking the pockets are airtight, and then hooking it up to our dual pump system on an Arduino, allowing us to inflate and deflate to give a natural look. We got the L298N most driver working to do this, but it would be a little clunky using more drivers to have more pumps, so Mishma designed her own circuit. The code for our test with the pumps, the code works so that when a pressure sensor is activated past a certain threshold, it starts a scripted event of breathing, swapping between the pumps and turning the splitter valve on and off. This one would work for the behaviour we wanted, a neutral breathing state, and then when the pressure sensor is activated, an excited state responding to the viewer. Here's the logic for an idea of the logic for the different states of breathing. I started modelling and then casting more organic forms, including one where 2 of the pockets are connected together but controlled by one pump. So these are the final models on the wireframe. Here is a mock-up of how the pressure sensor interaction would work with a neutral state at the beginning, which, when the pressure sensor is activated, it changes, responding to the viewer. This is a mock-up of the neutral state, which we had to do without the circuit as we had issues on the day we met up to work. Finally, this is a plan for how to finish the piece. We're thinking of making / 3D printing a case for the Arduino and pump circuit, leaving the air tubes and wiring for the pressure sensor up to the frame. I also need to finish applying the latex samples and finish getting the look right. Thank you.